Hello and welcome to Fine is the Four-Letter Word. My guest today is really special because this is the first interview with a guy. I told y'all that in season 2 I was going to be talking to some men and getting to hear their stories as well. So, Brian Merrell, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I feel like pretty honored. I guess I'm the first guy.
Yes.
So I'm your first guy.
You should be honored. And you know why? We were talking about before I hit record was because Brian's been listening to the show for a while, and he was actually the first one to come and ask me, like, hey, I want to be on your show. And I said, no, I'm only talking to women. And then after a while, he was persistent, maybe. No, I don't know why, but that I decided, because other ones came to me too. And I'm like, well, maybe we're missing out if we don't get stories from guys. And so that's when I started saying, all right, in season two. And here we are in season 2. So, so thank you so much for agreeing to come on. Let's jump right in with the first question. What were the beliefs and values that you were raised with?
Oh, wow. All right. So I grew up on a small dairy farm in upstate New York, single mom. So my parents divorced. It's funny, is like I've gone back and forth with counselors, and I realized that I have no memories before 9 years old of them being together. So I can't even remember what it was like when my parents were together. So I pretty much grew up in a single female household. My mom worked, obviously. My grandmother lived right next door, so the farm was right there, and so I spent a lot of time with my grandmother when I was younger. And then I have an older brother, and then I have a younger brother who's 14 years younger than me. But a real small town, upstate New York. So yeah.
So what were the values and beliefs that were instilled in you as you were growing up?
So growing up on the farm, obviously, so I didn't have to work on the farm, so it's not like I had to do it, but my cousin, who his father was partners in the farm, he did. So we're same age. So I naturally gravitated where I worked on the farm. I loved working on the farm. So I learned basically at a really young age, what a dollar meant. I was always lucky because I was able to buy my own. Like I wanted my Air Jordan, so I'd save up my money and I'd buy, the stuff I wanted. But I liked working on it. My grandfather, a very quiet man, but like he was one of those, the stereotypical, didn't really like ever express his emotion, but you always knew he loved and cared about you. Mm-hmm. And being around him and my grandmother and seeing my mom's work ethic, I mean, I always felt I had a great life growing up. Like we were poor, but I guess I didn't know.
Okay, and then as you were growing up, how did those beliefs and how did those beliefs like play into who you became as an adult?
Yeah, so. Like most kids, I was a bad kid.
Wait. We
all rebelled.
Don't throw me into that fire. So, I wasn't a bad kid.
Yeah. So I rebelled like everybody else, at some point. Like I didn't. My mom married. She was married 3 times. Second guy I absolutely loved. He was a great guy. Treated us great. Just really respectful to women in general, to us being, my mom's kids. She just wasn't in love with them, which I respect the hell out of her for being able to walk away from that. And so my third stepfather, my third father there, he totally different. He was very male chauvinistic, very intimidating type guy, and I guess I always felt like he bullied my mom and he bullied us. And he didn't beat us or anything like that, but verbally. Mm-hmm. And so it really kind of shaped. I always used to say that I'm not going to be this way. I don't want to be this way. And, I got into some trouble when I was in school. So I was one of those kids who had to make a choice that you either join the military or, you take your chances.
Yeah.
So I wound up leaving and joining in the military right out of high school. And when I came back home, it was just, I was one of these people, I guess I hate saying I live to work, but I have that mentality where that's where I kind of focus on, and I try, and just like my mom didn't focus a lot on herself and her needs, and she kind of went through the motions. I always felt like, and I think I found very young that in young adulthood that I probably did too. If it was, I stayed like in the easy lanes, so to say.
What, when you say easy lane, well, so wait, so she lived to support her children.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
you took on that same role of living to support your family.
Yeah. So I met my ex-wife right when I came home for leave on the Army when I was 19. A friend of us introduced us. We obviously at one point were in love, you know what I mean, and I wound up not going back full time and going in the reserves and making a life and everything. But we had 2 kids before we got married, so we did everything backwards, right? So we had
Wait,
2
did you
kids
buy a
before we
house
got
before
married.
you got married too?
No, when I actually bought my first house, we were married.
Okay. All right.
We
Because I
rented.
did that.
We rented.
My husband and I we bought our house first and then got married several years later. So yeah, it was like we did everything's out of order, but it didn't matter.
Right. No. Yeah. So actually, we when my son was born, we got married 3 months later, and it was one of those things where like, I guess like came home one night, she was upset, and I'm like, "What's the matter?" And she's like, "I guess it's not a big deal if we're not married. You're not going to leave." And I'm like, "Well, yeah. Well, if that's what will make you happy, yeah, I'm fine with it." Like, and at that time, we were in love, and had the kids and stuff. But as time grew on, I mean, when we bought so I built a house, and then we bought our second house. When we bought our second house, my kids. It was in 2007, and we slept on different floors. I mean, we worked separate shifts. I mean, I tell people you'd be amazed at how much you can put up with when you only have to see each other on the weekends.
Yeah, so many people live that way, but they don't admit it. Like, everybody looks great on social media. And
Facebook fake.
I had dinner last night with an acquaintance, somebody I hadn't seen in a very long time, and she's like, "Oh yeah, so I've since last time I saw you, she told me about her whole story," and I was like, "Wait, what?" Like, but you don't see it on Facebook or social media or anything because a lot of us don't want, we don't want our entire life out there like that. It's not for everybody's consumption.
Exactly. And my ex-wife and I, and she passed away 3 years ago, but she were total opposites. We were truly total opposites, and I can't honestly remember any time being together that we were actually in sync with each other than with the kids. And I found like I was in love with being dad. Mm-hmm. And that's where if you asked me who is Brian Merrell, I would always say, well, I'm Tara and Brock's father. I coach their sports. I do their this. I do their that. And I that was in my mind my identity.
Yeah.
And I can't speak for my ex-wife, but maybe she felt that her identity was mom, and that was her only identity. So when we got divorced, I just wound up getting to a point where things were bad. We were fighting all the time, and I'm just like, why are we doing this, Uh-huh. And when she had threatened me that she was going to divorce me for like 6-7 months, and then she quit her job.
Only 6 or 7 months?
Oh, well, the whole time she always would throw it in my face. I mean, I always thought I was like this horrible person. I mean, this whole time, the whole time in the marriage, I felt like guilt. Well, I'm going to show you, I'm not going to be like my dad, and I'm going to stick around. All these things, I'm not going to, I love being dad. My father, he just, he did his own thing. He left, and it's not that he didn't love us or anything like that. We weren't a priority to him. And for me, it was the opposite. My kids were everything to me. They were my priority. And I don't know. It was really kind of crazy. And then when I finally said the words to her, "Look, I've had enough," she was physical with me. I mean, because she knew. And it's funny because people would look at us, and they just assume I'm kind of a bigger guy, I guess, in some standards, and people would assume that I would be the one that, if anyone, would be abusive. And I'm like, no, I'd walk in the house and like, she'd punch me right in the face, and I wouldn't even know what was going on.
Wow. See, and this is another thing, though, that, right, when we talk about assumptions, we assume that everything's great because that's what it looks like. And then we assume that the man is the aggressor. And
Right.
that I've heard many stories that similar to yours, too, not to like minimize what you went through, but just to share that it's not always the man being the one who's abusing.
And I can look back at this now because I didn't know any of this until after she passed away 3 years ago. I finally seen medical records, and she was diagnosed with multiple personalities.
Really?
And now that I look back at it, light bulb. I mean, like when these actions they were often, but when these would happen, they would be like completely out of the blue, and I would always be like clueless to what she was talking about. Like, and I mean, it got to a point where it was Thanksgiving Day, and it was so stupid. She was a hoarder, so we struggled with that, and a lid on a cookie jar broke, and for some reason, she was blaming it on my son, and he was little at the time. I mean, maybe 10 years old, and she was like going after him to hit him. And I'm like, you don't even know if he did. Like, how do you know? And I seen her raise her hand, and I got between them, and I don't know what she hit me in my head with, but like I went down.
Wow.
She hit me in the back of the head, and I was like, okay, we're going to Grandma's for Thanksgiving. So she never went to any of the family get-togethers. She didn't want to be around my family at all. And I remember that's when I was sitting there contemplating what was going to happen. I mean, I didn't realize at this time my head was bleeding. I had no idea. Oh, wow. Yeah, so I don't know what she hit me with, or maybe she had a ring on. I don't know. But I remember just talking to my parents, and they're like, you need to leave. And I still didn't want to leave because I didn't want to be a failure in my marriage.
Right.
I didn't want to be a failure as a father. I felt like I was failing my kids. And then it took we got in a big argument right after Christmas, and I said, look, I met with a lawyer. I'm filing for divorce. And next thing I know, she filed, and that's when the whirlwind of hell completely started. I mean, she literally told me, I had it on recording. Thank God I did when I went to court. And I totally, because how it takes like 8 months to a year to finally get to, your trial for your divorce.
Well, it's different in different states, yeah.
Yeah, they want you, I mean, and we've been to court like already 6-7 times, and every time I'm like, wait a minute, what's going on? Then I literally went in the court, and I'll never forget it because I got physically sick to my stomach and started throwing up. We're sitting on the stand, and I was so blindsided. The judge, my lawyer, had said something to her along the lines of, well, your marriage couldn't have been all that bad. I mean, you had 2 great kids. I mean, you must have had some good times. And then she says, yeah, if you consider being beaten and raped daily as a great marriage. And I just lost it.
Oh, my gosh.
And I was like, what? Like, I mean, first of all, we hadn't slept on the same floor since, this is in 2014, in 7 years. Okay. And I can honestly tell you, it'd been at least 2 years.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I'm not a cheater. I mean, it's just, I don't know. It just doesn't, I don't know why I never did, but I just didn't. But I was physically sick to my stomach, and I kept thinking, you don't give a shit if I go to jail. And then I remembered, wait a minute, you recorded this argument you had, because it was like really, like she broke through our bedroom door to scream at me. And I happened to hit record on my phone, and in that recording she says, it doesn't have to be true, I just have to say it, and your life will be ruined the rest of your life. You will be judged.
Wow.
And I freaking played it, and her lawyer went ballistic because I just started playing it. I didn't so it got heard no matter what. But I still got investigated. I mean, they have to, they should. And I just remember, and my daughter, because it didn't speak to me for 6 years. 6 years, she said, I'm going to live with Mom. You're dead to me. And I was devastated.
Backing up, I'm so, like, what made you hit record? on that. Like, that's so.
She knew when she was being recorded too. Like she could see me doing it. When she was standing outside the bedroom door, and I put a lock on it, and she's screaming at me, and I'm like, "Look, I'm not talking to you. I'm not coming out." Because you could just feel like you're being set up.
Sure.
And then when she like hit the door so hard she broke it, I knew something was about to happen.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
So
And
instinct,
I don't
just
know.
hit record.
Yeah, because that's how she was. Her and her parents, they like record everybody, videotaped everybody.
Oh,
They're
okay.
They're always fighting with somebody.
Wow. So
And
yeah, a
like,
lot of drama.
yes. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in my episode with Jenny Vaz, we talked about drama and chaos and how she pulled herself. She got some help. She was used to living in chaos, but she didn't want to. She wanted to find a way out of that. And when she finally did, and she was living in calm, she said something. She was like, I don't know what to do with this. I only know how to live in chaos. I don't know how to live in calm. And so then after you moved, did you move out?
It was really
after it was over,
yeah.
really, like how when you weren't living together anymore and you could live in calm, was that like how was that?
So
Did you go looking
was,
for chaos again?
I think for up till probably a couple of years ago, I think now that I can look back at it, I went to counseling the whole time, and honestly, the last time I was counseling was probably a year and a half ago. So I've done counseling, and I went to a psychiatrist towards the end of it, where the light bulb finally went off, and they explained to me it was just time. I was finally time to come to grips, and then I realized that I looked for situations I knew was going to fail. You look for situations that are going to have some type of drama to it because you see that as the norm. And when I look at it, like I met this girl, and we were on and off again for 3 years, and she's a great person, but together we're toxic for our behavior. And not that we're mean to each other,
Right.
but like all of a sudden, like I'm drinking every night. I'm out like middle of the work week, all this stuff. She didn't think there's anything wrong with it, and I'm thinking, oh wow, this is fun. Like these were behaviors that I wasn't doing, that I was started doing, and I convinced myself I was in love with her, and I even asked her to marry me twice, and she told me no twice, and I realized that we're just basically we're drinking buddies. That's what we are.
Yeah.
And I don't need a drinking buddy, and she doesn't really need me as a drinking buddy. Like we were crutches for each other, even though it doesn't seem like when we were together, like we're always happy and have a good time. We're still negative for each other,
Right.
In personal growth.
Yeah.
And it took a lot for me to get that.
So since you mentioned personal growth, talk about some of the tools. So you said you went to counseling. What are some of the other tools that you've used to pull yourself out of like the situations that are not healthy for you, or to help in your development and growth? So because I know one of them that you had shared when we had a conversation before about removing yourself from that group of people that
negative influences.
Negative influences.
Yeah. So it's funny is because I knew all these things, and you give all these tools, but until you're ready to start doing them and acting on them, it's all for nothing, right? So I mean, I actually had two guys that I'm really great friends with, and the one of them I've been friends with since I was in kindergarten. And he's not so much of a negative towards me as the second one is. And I realize, like, every time we go out, I'm just being beat down. Every time they literally would sit there and, I'm not trying to, I spent 8 years in the Army. I'm not proud of everything I've done, but you do things. And you do things because you have to. And I was a combat medic. And the one guy always telling me how I'm mentally so weak compared to him and all this crap, and then he called me vagina all the time and freaking, it was,
Wow.
to them, their entertainment was putting me down in front of other people to make themselves feel better. And for a long time, it go around. And I remember we had 2 incidents where we had a blow up. Once every Halloween we go out to eat together for some reason. I don't know how it started, and we went to a place, big steakhouse, and they thought it was funny to try to get the waitress in on it. And she was like, "Oh, she thought it was funny to sit there calling me a freaking vagina the whole time."
Wow.
And I'm sitting there going, "Okay." And then I sat there, and I've never done this before. I gave her $1 tip on the bill, and I wrote right on there, and I said, "By the way, you played their game of who's the biggest vagina." I said, "Maybe what you should have asked was who's the only one with a job in a car that could drive here." And then, so that's Halloween. So then every Thanksgiving, we got into a tradition where we went gambling on the night before Thanksgiving because we're all divorced guys. And so we got into a big, I don't even remember how the arguments, it was so stupid. We play 4-card poker all the time. So we're sitting there, and the one guy coaches high school sports, and he's all shit-faced drunk, and he's like just got his coaching check up front. And he literally makes half of what I make for a living. And we're sitting there at the poker table, and I said, "Well, guys, I hit my limit for the night. I'm getting up." And he goes, "Oh, what's the matter, vagina? You got to freaking go, you don't got no money and all that." And he goes, "Here, what do you need, $20? And he flipped a $20 bill at me in front of everybody at the casino. And I stopped, and I'm sitting there, and I said, "All right, let's one more hand." So I take the $20 and I get a chip. I said, "One more hand." I said, "But we're going to have a side bet going." I said, "All right." So I go, "First of all, I'm going to put up my SUV." So that's my first one. You got a match. I go, "Oh, wait a minute. I might as well put up my truck too. And how about my boat? Oh yeah, and I'm going to put up my Harley too." And I said, "Okay." I said, "Wait a minute, but you don't have a Harley, so I got to take that back. Oh, wait a minute, you don't have a boat, so I better take that back too." And I said, "Well, you don't have a truck." I said, "Well, wait a minute, you don't even have a car." So I took it all back, and I said, "Wow, thanks for the $20." And I tipped the freaking guy. I tipped the dealer, and I walked away.
And was that the last time you hung out with those guys?
No.
So,
it got
slow learner, are you? No.
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually didn't, because of the big blow up right there. I guess he went and told everybody that because my daughter and everything would come back in my life, that I didn't want anyone to bother me and be around me and stuff. So we went 5 months. I didn't talk to him, hear from him, nothing. But he told all my friends I didn't want to hear from them either, which I had no clue.
So you weren't hearing from them, and you're like,
yeah.
Why am I not hearing from my friends?
A little bit. I mean, I kind of was like, I'm okay being alone, and I had a lot of things going on. I mean, it was a rough time. And then he winds up messaging me one day, and I'm like, "Look, I got nothing to say to you. Like, you're an asshole to me every time." So we finally said to sit down and talk about now look, you find this entertaining.
Right.
And you sit there and you say to me, so I have PTSD, and you want to sit there and think it's funny to scream at me and tell me I got to get out of my own head. Do you realize what you're saying to me? Because I could snap and you could no longer exist. You just beat on me, and that's not the way to deal with me. And telling me because I don't want to sit there and be called a vagina and put down and called a pussy and all these things in front of people constantly, that I need to grow a thicker skin. I'm in sales, dude. I get told to go F myself all day long, all day. So why would I want to come home to this crap?
Right. You already got out of a marriage where you were being
right. Oh, my ex-wife, my ex-wife demasculated me on a daily basis.
Right. So now you're getting it from your friends.
Yes, and now you get it from your friends. So the one guy, the big guy that everybody would think would be the one that would be the jerk, isn't. Mm-hmm. And so we seem to come to an understanding, and things get really, really good. And of course, just like anything else, it winds up going bad once again. So I actually have not spoken to them. Well, I've spoken to the one guy probably end of September. No contact.
Yeah. And I'm sure that's difficult for you because
actually,
these are your
lifelong
friends. No? Okay.
It actually hasn't been with the one, and that's what surprises me. So my one friend and I, it was literally bullshit misunderstanding type thing. Him and I are talking. But he's been my friend since kindergarten. Mm-hmm. He introduced me to my ex-wife. Mm-hmm. The other guy, No, I guess I finally see, like, I guess drama and manipulation is entertainment. And what's funny is with your other friends approach you and sit there and bring it up to you that, look, we're not truths and sides, but look, man, what they're doing to you is bullshit. And I'm like, well, that's cool. I'm glad you think that, but I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And that's all I can say. You at least, I thank God you see it. They're like, dude, we've been seeing it for years. I'm like, but yet you never said anything to them.
Right.
You never got it. Like you never.
Right.
They're like, yeah, well, we've made it known now. And they're like, now when we all go out on wing night, they fight with each other because they don't have you to bully and pick on anymore. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. I said I took away their entertainment.
And also because they have to still live in chaos. So they have to find some other way to bring that chaos in.
Oh, absolutely.
If it's not going to be directed at you, it's going to be directed at somebody, and nothing's. And so just going back to the whole thing of you decided to change, to stand up and say, I'm not taking this anymore. You decided to change the game, so to speak. Mm-hmm. That's the only way things are going to change in life, right? Somebody has to decide a decision, and nothing's going to change if nothing changes.
Yeah. Yeah, one of my favorite sayings is, I get two of them. One is, everything you ever want is on the other side of fear.
Yes.
And the other one is something like, you don't change until the pain of change or the pain of staying the same outweighs the pain of change.
Ooh, I love it.
And I was like, that's true, because you truly, and don't get me wrong, I don't hate anybody in this world. I mean, like when my ex-wife died, I was seeing somebody, and I had such a guilt about being happy, and knowing it truly ripped me apart, and and obviously she got tired of waiting, which I can't blame her. But it changed my life. That year that my ex-wife died 3 years ago, I buried 8 people in 10 months.
Wow.
And I was a basket case, and that's when I finally broke out of it. And I started doing the meditation, and I started changing the way I eat, and I went back to exercising like I used to. I used to run a gym. Christ, how do you get away from that? And I started going back to things that made me happy or made me forget about the bad things. And then obviously at the summit when Sean Crane spoke, I've heard it a million times, but since then, we truly live in our office by saying I get to versus have to.
Yeah.
And it's made a huge difference in the way I stopped talking to myself negatively like I used to before. And all these things, I guess I got to the point where, look, if being around me, you feel jealous or whatever, that's not on me. And I always used to feel bad about it. But it's funny, we have a younger girl that worked with us, and until she phrased it to me one day, I never thought about it. And it's easy to be there for somebody when they're down and out, because then you can be on their level. But when things are going good for them and everything's on the up and up, if you're not happy for them, then you have the problem. I'll never forget the last face-to-face conversation I had with this friend. We just made the decision to buy a business, and the owner offered me to be partner in it. So I have a small, ownership in it. And we're sitting there, and he just did something really horrible to me that I was just like, whatever, And we were sitting there, and he's ignoring me, and they're going on. And finally, they start talking. And then I said, well, by the way, guys, hey, so I guess I'm going to move forward. We're going to buy this place. So I said, so welcome for me being broke again. And he just looked at me, turned his head, took a drink, and said, oh. And wasn't happy for me that things are going good. He likes it when I'm down and out.
Right, because it makes him feel better. And this is right. So this is a really important point for people who are listening, which is that if you can't be around friends who are happy for you when things are going well, then those are probably not true friends.
Right, and that was so hard for me to get through my head. Now, the one guy that I've been friends with since kindergarten, he has saved my life. He has been there for me when everything was bad, and he's also there for me anytime anything that's positive happened to me. He's one of the first people to tell me that he's happy for me.
That's awesome.
And that's why it was easy for me to reconnect when we have an argument versus the other guy. And the other guy, don't get me wrong, and I'm not trying to make an excuse for him, but he was absolutely going through hell.
Yeah.
Absolutely going through hell in a bad situation. I mean, him and his girlfriend moved in together, happy, and as soon as she moved in, she didn't want to be with him anymore, and then wouldn't leave.
But that's not that's not on you though. That's his that's his shit to deal with. And
it is.
And no reason for him to be taking it out on you, because that's not what friends do.
Right.
And so recognizing true friendship versus somebody that you're just used to hanging out with because it's habit.
Yeah.
Or because
in the
it's
same
easy.
situation.
Or, right, because it's easy. It's just he happens to be there, so I'll hang with him. Yeah.
And I noticed for probably 2 years it's starting to drift, because like I don't want to sit home and, I mean, I love to watch sport, but I'm not going to run home and then sit there and drink a 12-pack and watch a game. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to do that. It's a work week. I don't want to live that life, and that's every day for them. And I can't be, it's not that I think less of them. I can't be around it because I can't handle that and function on the level I want to.
Right. That's not what you want for you, because you want to be a better version of yourself, and the only way you can do it is to hold yourself to different standards.
Right. And that's what I mean. I came up with who am I, where do I want to be, and how am I going to get there? And I changed. And I mean, I've changed the whole mentality. Like, you didn't know me before any of this.
Right.
So, like, if you could have met me a year earlier, you'd be like, this is a completely different human being.
Yeah.
From his mindset and how he carries himself.
Yeah, interesting. So just to recap, you went to counseling, you did meditation.
Absolutely.
You, what inspired you to do that reevaluation of who am I, where do I want to be? Was it something you read? What was?
I'm sure it had to do with a lot of things I was reading, posts like Facebook is a very negative space, right? Yeah. People put a lot of negative type of posts there, and I look back and I'm like, I'm putting these down there too. Like, Jesus, man, you look like you're super depressed. I'm like, well, you are. And I guess part of me was the day when my daughter came back in my life, I went 6 years waiting for that day that I get that text, that call, and then I got it, and then her mom died, and within the first 30 days, I'm like, okay, so my name is not Brian anymore. It's Dad. You need to start calling me Dad. And we had to go through. I had to take every bit of hate, abusive things she's ever wanted to say to me. I had to take that and learn to take it so that I could move forward, because the fear of losing my daughter in my life again outweighed the pain of change.
Yeah. And good for you for recognizing that you had to, that was part of her way of getting it all out, directed at you, but not really about you.
Right.
And being able to take it because you knew that that's what she needed to be able to move on to, so that both of you could now kind of start fresh.
Yeah. And then I had this realization, like, this whole time, like, my son, so going into COVID, his senior year in high school, and I'm sitting there going, all right, so he had to put up with me owning a bar and being gone at night every night for almost a year. And then I get him back, and we repair our relationship. I was a real shitty dad to him. I may not have been like abusive or anything like that, but I mean, emotionally, was I there for him? And then I'm sitting there going, so to me during COVID, when we all get sent home, that was a blessing. I got to spend and reconnect with my son. And I mean, and he stood by me through the whole divorce. I mean, and I wasn't a great dad to him. I favored my daughter when they were little. I mean, because she was like me, and he's total opposite. And He had to listen to 6 freaking years of his dad whining, bitching, and crying that he couldn't talk to his daughter, and he is sitting right there by me.
Wow.
And I just sat there one day and said, what an asshole I must be to neglect your own son like that. And we have a good relationship, but I had to have made him feel inferior. Had to have.
And now you know better, and now you can do better. Like, we all are in these places where you look back and go, man, that was a poor decision, or I really messed up there. And you know, one of my, I don't know what to call him. He's this guy that I follow sometimes is called his name is Peter Crone. He's known as the Mind Architect. And he has this saying that the past, oh man, now I'm going to mess it up. What is it? The past, it couldn't have turned out any, oh man, now I have to have Greg fix this, but it's, wait a second. Peter Crone, I got to look this up. And, oh, what happened, and it couldn't have happened any other way because it didn't.
It's true.
I also had a conversation recently with someone else who said, yeah, you can beat yourself up. You can think about it for every minute of your current life now, but you cannot change the past. No matter how much you think about it, you can't change it. So all we can do is go forward from this minute now, taking this new knowledge and being better.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I went through the whole, you know, why did you put up this front that you had this happy marriage and all this stuff when your kids are the ones suffering because they're seeing what's going on behind closed door. And then I went through the whole thing with, well, what if I hung on a little bit longer?
Yeah.
Would she still be alive?
Yeah.
What if I was a real asshole during the divorce and I actually forced her to get out of the house like she was ordered to versus selling her the house? Then it would have forced her to stop living the way she did. Would she be alive? So I blamed my ex-wife's death on a lot of things that I did wrong. And like I said, I was guilty of being a good provider.
Yeah,
and
right.
And that's what I was. I was a provider, but I wasn't a loving husband. When my ex-wife and I finally sat down and kind of talked for the first time civilly, 5 years after the divorce, and I asked her why she made up all these things, and her answer was, "I was angry." With you.
Yeah, people
and like,
do
well,
things
angry doesn't give me back. You know, like I wasn't allowed to coach sports or be around kids for like 2 fucking years.
Yeah.
Because of things she said and doing. I was labeled as something that I wasn't. And what if I did for some reason get sent to jail and killed, you know, or whatever.
Right. Well, and all of these things are what if.
Yes.
And no, you can't go back and change.
No, and you can't change any of that. I mean, I'm thankful for every lesson I've learned. And that's so like, I don't even remember who convinced me, but like of gratitude every day. Not like just being.
It would have been me, but everything. I think you picked this up before we met.
I don't know. I mean, it's funny is sometimes you just change the words, right?
Right.
What you because now you know what it's called. But I don't know. My uncle Danny was like my brother. And he was one of the people that died on me. And 3 weeks before his death, out of the blue, he had this conversation with me like he knew he was dying. It was like the last things he wanted to make sure he said to me. And he apparently had many conversations like that with people just before he died.
Yeah.
And it was a tragic death. His truck fell on him when he was working.
Oh my gosh! Wow. But
I mean,
it's
it was
interesting
horrible.
how people know, like they know at like a soul level, even if they don't really know. And that's a whole other, like we could do a whole other show on that. So thank you for being here, Brian. But before we go, you know, I got to ask you, what's your hype song? Wait, you called it something else. What did you call it?
It's called, I think the name of the song is called Remember the Name.
Yes. Well, Remember the Name, but What was, you had another term that you might have used before we got on and started recording. It wasn't hype song. It was something else. Like,
Oh my
like your
God.
walk up song, your hype song.
Probably my sales go-to song probably is something
Right.
along that. Yeah, because it was like every time I was going on a sales call, this song freaking pop on, and it wasn't ever. I'm like, this isn't me. Then I'm like, so the next thing you know, like I'm looking for it.
Yeah, right.
I
So
look
that's
for it to
what
get
you
me
listen
hyped
to
up.
when you need to get pumped up. Is that song. All right, well, we will put a link in the show notes. If people want to have more of a conversation with you because this resonated with them, what's the best place for them to reach you?
Yeah, so I just launched a podcast called Tattooed in Business. So I have a tattooedinbusiness@gmail.com, or you can always reach me on my I'm on Facebook under my name, Brian Merrell, or Tattooed in Business. They can message me through there, or of course Brian at GY6promotions.com.
Okay. All
So,
right. Well,
yeah, I'm pretty open.
Put it all in the show notes, so it'll make it really easy.
Cool.
Thanks so much for being here, Brian.
I hope I didn't disappoint you.
No, not at all. All right. Take care, and we'll see you next time on Fine is a Four-Letter Word.
Thank you so much.